Today, we've got some big news. Some very big news. Bigger than the Canon EOS R5 Mark II announcement, bigger than the Canon EOS R1 announcement. It's about Nikon's cinema division. What cinema division, you ask? Nikon Corporation announced today that it had entered into an agreement with James Jannard, the founder of RED. But before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. Nikon and RED have solved their patent dispute in a very big way. When the case between the two companies was dismissed without prejudice back in the first half of 2023, few details were known, other than Nikon was allowed to keep using the compressed RAW format. Other than that, no details were forthcoming, at least until now. Simply put, Nikon has entered into an agreement to purchase RED, giving them the one thing that they've been lacking, a leading-edge cinema division. Subject to the satisfaction of various closing conditions, which is normal in a deal of this size, Nikon has entered into an equity transfer agreement that included the acquisition of all of RED's interests, and agreed to make RED a subsidiary of the company. Not only does this give Nikon a much-needed cinema division, but much-needed technology, like the sensor behind the RED V-Raptor X and XL, capable of 8K video, delivering a staggering 17 to 20 stops of dynamic range with their global shutter technology, completely trouncing Sony's recent global sensor found in the A9 Mark III. Hitting hard at Canon and their competition, immediately coming to market with products ready to go. And this news is huge. It really is big. It's not like Nikon's buying some sort of defunct company that's been languishing in the basement for years without any useful technology. The RED V-Raptor X and XL, a $30,000 cinema camera, was just recently announced, and it's an incredible camera. It has a global shutter sensor like the Sony A9 Mark III, but unlike that sensor, this one doesn't have any problems with low light performance, delivering a minimum of 17 stops of dynamic range and going all the way up to 20 stops of dynamic range. And it does that delivering 8K video in all the basic frame rates and then punching it up to 8K at 120 frames per second. It really is a powerhouse. It's something that I get excited about. And when I look at Canon's lineup, I look and I go, yeah, now this seems a little bit dated. This seems a little bit old, but RED? No. Acquiring RED with a product line that's been actively developed over the past several years, producing cameras like the RED V-Raptor X and XL, this is going to make Nikon a very, very powerful company. And if we go back to 2020 or even 2019 or even 2021, many were calling for the demise of Nikon, and even myself wasn't too confident about the company. Then Nikon released the Z9, their flagship mirrorless camera, and this proved not only to their customer base, but to the world. Not only was Nikon back, but they were back with a leading-edge camera. A camera that could shoot stills at 20 frames per second lossless RAW. And 20 frames per second doesn't sound like a lot today, but that's lossless RAW. That's a total bandwidth of 1.2 gigabytes per second. Now, if we drop that down to 11 megapixels, we get a staggering 120 frames per second. And in terms of video, the Nikon Z9 can deliver 8K video up to 60 frames per second and records in Apple ProRes up to 4K. It's a very powerful camera. And then last year, right around May the 9th or the 10th, I can't remember which day, but we got the Nikon Z8, which was not only a mini Nikon Z9, and that's a bit of an understatement. It's essentially the exact same camera for $1,500 less, beating the Canon EOS R5, a camera that had been out for about 3 years at the time. The Nikon Z8, very, very powerful, very, very potent camera, and we're seeing innovation in lenses. They're 800mm f6.3 for about, $6,000 to $9,000 less than the Canon RF 800mm f5.6. And yes, it's a third of a stop wider, but Nikon is producing some really incredible cameras. They're producing some really incredible lenses. But the one thing that's been lacking, leading many of us to speculate their new camera, will it have more powerful video features because they're not cannibalizing a cinema line. Now, they do have a cinema line. a very powerful and potent cinema line. Nikon's Red division, a subsidiary of Nikon. That's going to be impressive. I can't wait. Well, you know, we don't have to wait to see the latest cameras from Nikon's cinema division because we just had the announcement of the Red V Raptor X and XL. And I'm sorry I'm having trouble speaking, but I'm kind of blown away with this. I just published a video already this morning. I've got another one scripted that was going to come out tomorrow that I'm going to record later today, and I was faced with this information. I just couldn't believe it. That patent dispute that we had back in 2023, I remember when the case was dismissed without prejudice. And without prejudice means that either company can come back and start proceedings again, that it isn't a done deal. And I thought, well, this is interesting. The case was dismissed without prejudice, but Nikon can keep using compressed RAW. Boy, that's bold. That's interesting. Now, no mention about anybody else being able to use it. So what was going on? And this happened around April of 2023. And I can guarantee you that this deal was likely something that was started right around that time because it takes time to work on an agreement, to come out with ideas, different, how shall we say, scenarios. And it can take an awful long time from the initial discussions with people high up in the company to actually signing an agreement. And we are pretty close there. There are a few things that they do have to work out, but the synergies in this deal are pretty impressive. But what this does for Nikon is it takes it from just an imaging company that produces very solid cameras like the Nikon Z8, the Nikon Z9, all those lenses, and with the Nikon Z6 Mark III to be announced very, very soon, this puts Nikon in a very, very strong footing. In fact, I look at Nikon's new cinema division and I look at Canon's cinema division, and Canon's cinema division looks like, well, that 8-year-old Toyota that you have. It's reliable, it's good, it's solid. You can keep driving it for another 10 years. But when you look at Red, it's like looking at that new Corvette. It's shiny, it's got all the latest and greatest technology, and yes, it can drive on regular roads without breaking your back. But when you need that performance, when you need that high-level, high-octane performance, it's going to deliver it. 8K video up to 120 frames per second in the Red V Raptor X and XL with 17 stops of dynamic range with a global shutter sensor. And if you're willing to reduce the resolution a little bit or the frame rates, you're able to increase that, are you ready for this? Dynamic range all the way up to about 20 stops. This is really impressive. This is very impressive, especially when we compare that to the recent global shutter sensor released by Sony in the A9 III. With an ISO range, well, of between 250 and 25,600, much reduced than what we see with the new Nikon Red V Raptor X and XL. Wow, what a big deal. This is huge news. I just can't get over this. If you're a Nikon customer, you got to be proud right now. This is huge. This is really, really big. And you can expect to see some of the patents from that global shutter sensor translate over into maybe the Nikon Z9, the successor to that camera, as well as the Nikon Z8. This gives Nikon a very impressive sensor, a hugely impressive sensor. Wow, I'm really excited by this deal. I keep going back to that patent resolution, being dismissed without prejudice. Yeah, that's a really big deal. Now, if you're a Canon customer or a Sony customer, the one thing you might be wondering is, what about using compressed RAW? Is Nikon going to open that up and allow others access to it? That's the big question, isn't it? But this is really good news if you're a Canon customer, if you're a Sony customer, because this really ramps up competition. This gives Red a bit more, well, deeper pockets, but it also gives Nikon a lot more synergies, taking a lot of that research and development into the global shutter sensor and bringing it over to the stills hybrid line. Imagine the Nikon Z9 capable of shooting 8K up to 120 frames per second with 17 to 20 stops of dynamic range without any of those traditionally bad cons like low light performance, like dynamic range. Having that in the Nikon Z9, being able to shoot at 20, 30, 40, 50, or even 60 frames per second. This is really big news. I'm super excited by this. And if you are interested in picking up the Red V Raptor, or I should say the Nikon Red V Raptor X or XL, you can get them for as low as $29.99. It was just recently announced, but please consider using my affiliate links down below these guys right here if you're planning on purchasing from Adorama, B&H, or Amazon.com. Sorry, I still can't get over this deal. But one thing, it's very important to let you know, if you do use my affiliate links to purchase any of the Red cameras or anything else such as a Nikon Z8, which is on sale right now, it's on sale a couple of $100s off, or purchase the Nikon Z9, then I do get anywhere from 2 to 12% back as a commission, and that really does help this channel grow. It's what allowed me to purchase really great gear, such as what I'm shooting with right now, the Canon EOS R5 with a 50mm f1.2, the 100 to 500, the 200 to 800, the 100mm macro, and the list goes on. Thank you. Without you and your support, without you watching this video, I wouldn't be where I am today. And you know, if you do use these affiliate links, it doesn't cost you anything extra. You don't have to go through hoops. You just click on the link and you've got complete access to the site at Adorama and B&H. And yeah, just, wow, I'm gobsmacked by this. I'm ranting and rambling because I didn't see this coming. And I don't think any of us saw this coming. Do you remember back to when the case was resolved and we were all kind of wondering, well, what does this mean? Did Nikon win? Did Red win? Nikon gets to keep using the compressed RAW format, but there's no details further about what these companies agreed to, because they agreed to something outside of the court and told the court, hey, we're willing to dismiss this without prejudice. Any company could come back later. I'm wondering, I really do believe that when it was dismissed without prejudice, somebody has said, hey, let's just dismiss this. Why don't we just buy you? You can become your own division. We'll give you greater funding. It'll allow you to do what you really want to do, such as the Red V Raptor X and XL. Oh, very exciting. But anyhow, I got to get ready for work in about 2 hours, so I better get this out right now. Thank you so much for watching. And also, if you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest, I do have more information about Canon RF third-party lenses. We've got some more detailed information giving us real honest answers as to why Canon's been dragging their feet, what they're doing now, and what they expect to see in the coming months. We've also got more information coming out about the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Canon EOS R1. So don't forget to subscribe and choose all notifications and follow me on X. But that's it for now. Have yourself a great day, a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.